All right, welcome everybody. My name is Rusty Mahalik. I'm the library director at Goldie Beacon College in Wilmington, Delaware. I'm also the convener of the ACRL Leadership Discussion Group. We're very pleased to have Erin Washington join us today to share her presentation on how immersive experiences change learning and lives. I saw her presentation last week at our college and it was wonderful. Unfortunately, you cannot put the VR headset on during the virtual presentation, but if you ever get a chance to do that, I highly recommend doing it. It's a pretty cool experience to see our students do that. And I'm going to now pass it off to Erin.
Thanks, Rusty. Well, hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you. I was very thrilled when Rusty asked me to present for ACRL. Before I was a business owner of Embodied Labs, I was in the academic library world for not quite a decade. I'll talk a little more about that toward the end of the presentation, but I'm thrilled to be here with you. I'm a librarian. I think librarians are, among the best people on the planet. So I'm happy to be here in your company. I live down in Greenville, South Carolina. I was born in Chicago, raised in Minnesota, and now I've been in the South longer than I've been up north. I've lived in Georgia and North Carolina and South Carolina, and election results notwithstanding, the South is a lovely place. I don't know if you all are from down here, but yes, come on and visit us. We're having a beautiful fall right now that I am greatly enjoying. So Rusty asked me to present on something similar to what I did at Goldie Beacon College just last week with their freshman class. It was lovely to be there. And so I titled my presentation, How Immersive Experiences Change Learning and Lives. My alternate presentation title, just flipping to my agenda right here. Oh, it's making me press OK. All right. My alternate title was number 6 there. Librarian to entrepreneur, weird or perfect. That's sort of what I wanted to call this presentation. More about that later. This is our agenda. So introduction, I'm going to talk a little bit about embodied labs. I'm going to talk about different types of empathy that there are. Even though we can't put on the VR headset, we are going to do a group embodiment and reflection. So I'll be asking for your participation, like we do to all of our students all the time. I'm also going to do a quick history of VR for those that are interested, to just kind of put this into context and just kind of give you a little overview of where we've been and where we might be going. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit at the end about how I turned from a librarian, crossed over to the dark side, and became essentially a vendor. But to do that, I started my own business, which I'll talk some about. And then we'll have questions and wrap up. And excuse me, I need to plug in my laptop. It was plugged in all morning, but it's giving me a battery thing. So hold on. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. My normal laptop that I use totally crashed yesterday, so I've had to switch all around. You know how that goes. Okay, let's jump in here. Okay, so this is me. This is who I am. This is sort of how the mission of Embodied Labs, the company that I co-founded, intersect with my own personal values and who I am. am both neurodivergent and queer identified. So founding a company that is based on empathy is very important to me as a human being. But it's a very personal reason that I ended up starting Embodied Labs. So in 2007 through 2009, I was getting my master's degree in library science at the University of Maryland. At the same time, my mom, who you see in this picture with my younger sister, was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. So that was pretty unexpected. She had been symptomatic really since probably her late 40s. We just kind of didn't realize it. And she was diagnosed when she was, I think it was, she was 51. And so our whole family were thrown into this caregiving, care support role that we totally didn't expect. You don't, when you're in your 20s, you don't expect your mom, who's barely 50, to get a disease that you associate more with people who are so much older. So we all had to kind of scramble and change our lives around to give her the care support that she needed. And so my sister, I'm going to pull up an image that might seem a little bit strange, this plate of food. My mom developed this visual impairment fairly early on in her disease process. And so when she would look at things, this is what she would see. And what I mean by this is she would see half. She would see everything in halves because she had a left visual field impairment where the left side of each of her eyes had a blind spot. And so we noticed this when she started eating her food like that. And this was around the time where we needed to hire some home health care aides to come in. My sister was living at home at the time. She had, again, with kind of like rearranging lives, she had rearranged her life so that she could be living at home and going to school part-time to be one of my mom's caregivers. And so she was helping to bring in these home health aides. And so she tried to explain my mom's visual impairment to them. And she realized that the best way to do it was to tape off the left sides of like your basic lab safety glasses, the clear plastic safety glasses. And she would hand them to these caregivers and say, here, this is how my mom sees. So when she looks at a plate of food, or when she eats a plate of food, she eats exactly half. And if you want her to eat all of it, then you've got to turn it because otherwise she's not going to see it. So it was just this really easy way for people to understand how to help just one aspect of my mom's care. And so my sister had this idea. She was at the time considering a master's in biomedical visualization or medical illustration. And she had this idea around like, what if we could create an experience that showed the first person perspective of someone living with any disease? Of course, we were thinking about Alzheimer's disease in particular because of our mom. But she thought, like, what if we could actually see, hear, experience, feel what it's like to walk in that person's perspective, walk in their shoes? How would that enable us to be better caregivers, not only for her health outcomes, but how would that help us as caregivers to be able to understand her and to be able to connect with her better and be perhaps less burned out ourselves as caregivers? And so after she went into her master's program, she never forgot that idea. And at the same time, virtual reality was becoming more widespread. Again, I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to the timeline, but it was sort of the perfect time and the perfect place in the advancement of the technology to actually create an experience that would do exactly that, put a person would put on the headset and they could embody the first person perspective of a person living with a visual and hearing impairment or Alzheimer's disease or something like that. So fast forward to today, we did end up starting Embodied Labs around this idea. And just from like a personal note, this was part of how I bridged out of academia into the business world. But at the time, I was library director at a small liberal arts college, Southern Methodist College, down here in South Carolina. And I had a baby who was not quite one, and I had a preschooler, and I was going to the library from 9 to 5, and then I was coming home and I was putting kids to bed and then working on this business until the wee hours and then starting over. And at a certain point that became untenable, and I had to make a choice to either go full-time or abandon it altogether. And at the same time, my mom actually got quite a bit worse. And we started Embodied Labs, we incorporated in July of 2016, and she actually died from her disease in August of 2016. And so it was at that point where I was like, you know what, I really want to do this and help honor her memory in a way that's going to help a lot of other people. So at the end of 2016, I left academia and jumped into Embodied Labs full time. And it was hard, but I have absolutely no regrets because of what you see right here. This entire learning library that we have of all of these different experiences. And probably as I've been talking, you've been looking at what we have available. And what really excites me about Embodied Labs is that we have intentionally included cultural competency in all of our experiences. So with the DEMA Lab, you are looking at what it's like when someone who's Muslim and Lebanese and has some particular dietary restrictions moves into a care community and needs, female care aides and needs to be eating a particular diet. So in addition to understanding what Parkinsonian symptoms are and Lewy body dementia, you're getting all of that cultural competency. And like in the Eden Lab, it's about trans health and the challenges of aging as an LGBTQ plus person, but it's also about trauma-informed care. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can remix this content and use it to teach students and professionals and family caregivers about the perspective of another person, the person that they're caring for. So that's where we are today. I'm just gonna play this short video for you. I think the quote is, talking about VR is like dancing about architecture. It's from some sort of TED Talk. And so I just want to play this for you. This gives you an idea of what it's like to be inside the headset and the kinds of people that are using this as essentially workplace training.
Good morning. I see you're up. I'm gonna make your coffee real quick and let me wash my hands.
I visit Paul and Janet every Thursday. I feel like they trust me and I'm just there for them, whatever they need.
Okay, Paul, what are we gonna eat today?
I think there's some berries in there.
One thing that we hear consistently from our caregivers is that they would like more training so that they can be the best they can for our clients.
Once you click Start Experience, then you can go ahead and put on your headsets.
XR technology is extended reality, and many organizations don't get the chance to use new, innovative technology that's available to train their workforce. Meta and Jobs for the Future are working on a demonstration project together to give small businesses the opportunity to showcase and utilize XR technology.
Mama, are you okay? What happened?
Embodied Labs provides an immersive experience for individuals to understand what it's like to be ill or experience a disease.
We do have a lot of clients who suffer from physical disabilities like hearing issues and vision problems. And it's one thing to say that somebody isn't able to see right in front of them or to hear you from across the room, but it's another thing to experience it for yourself.
The very first time I put the headset on, I didn't know what to expect. And then all of a sudden, I looked at my hands, I looked around. It was totally a different world. I feel that this training has helped us to understand our clients better. It will help me serve my clients going forward, being there for them, understanding them, listening to them, just being with them and letting them be themselves.
Any business right now is experiencing the same issue of employee retention.
I think that this type of training really reignites the passion that caregivers have, why they sign up for this type of career in the first place.
I go slow every day with them when we go to the grocery store or wherever we go. Some people might not understand it, but I'm understanding it. So I think VR would help more people understand. I think if it was out there for the community, I think a lot more people would take their time with the elders.
Okay, so that was kind of a collaboration we did with this group called Jobs for the Future. They were collaborating with Meta, and then we were able to work with some home health agencies from all around the country. Visiting Angels was the one that you saw in that video. So that was a really great pilot to be able to take this to so many home health workers. So you heard that home health worker, the one in particular, talking a lot about connecting with her clients. So a lot of times when people hear kind of the nutshell of what Embodied Labs is, they're like, oh, you're a company about empathy. And in a way, that's 100% correct. And at the same time, there's also some nuance. And the nuance is what you see right here. When we talk about what empathy is, there are actually a lot of different kinds of empathy. And this is what I talked with the students at Goldie Beacom when I was there last week too. But you can Google this or look through the peer-reviewed literature. There's a ton of research that's been done on these different types of empathy. These are the 4 categories that I like. You're going to see various groupings of empathy categories depending on who you read and what you read. But so emotional empathy. So that is the ability to feel an emotion that someone else is feeling. And emotional empathy it's sort of reflexive, it's sort of automatic. Like if you see a commercial on TV that's kind of sappy and you start to feel yourself getting choked up, that's emotional empathy. If you feel sad for someone when they tell you something sad, like someone that's a loved one has cancer, for example, or you hear someone talking about something and you really disagree and you feel angry. These are all examples of emotional empathy. And emotional empathy is really tied to somatic empathy. In a way that they can be almost the same thing, but I think they are distinct. So it's where you actually have a physical response in your body to another person's feelings. And again, this is a bit of an automatic response. So you might blush in response to someone's embarrassment. That's a physical response. So I think those two, emotional and somatic, are sort of together in a category that is something that you can't necessarily control. It's, I think, something that people are naturally more emotionally and somatically, if that's a word. I think some people are naturally more those things than others. But I feel like cognitive and compassionate empathy are ones that you can actually develop practices and skills around. So if we look at cognitive empathy, that's being able to both understand and reflect back an emotion that someone is feeling. So all of us, whether we automatically sense how someone's feeling or we automatically feel empathetic, all of us have the ability to simply ask someone, how are you feeling? How does that make you feel? And then be able to reflect back. So my example is telling someone that you can imagine how isolating it must sometimes feel to live with a disability. Maybe you were listening to them talking and you reflected that back to them. So cognitive empathy is, I think, one of the most important types of empathy, and it's the best way to start creating an empathetic conversation with someone to understand their perspective, which I think is one of the most absolutely essential things that we can do in our society right now, as things grow more and more polarized. And then cognitive empathy, I think, is very closely, or it can be very closely tied to compassionate empathy. So that's where you're motivated to act based on your understanding of another person's perspective. So perhaps becoming an advocate for a vulnerable population. I think you can see how if you skip cognitive empathy, like say you have emotional empathy, and you jump right from emotional empathy to compassionate empathy, doing something about it, you might miss some steps. You might miss understanding what the best way to help might be, or maybe what the problem even is. So I've had a really interesting time, just even separate from my work with Embodied Labs, just thinking about these different types of empathy and how they can play out in our everyday interactions, in our personal lives, in our professional lives. And I find it really fascinating. I'll pull these types of empathy back in just a little while. Okay, so this is where I want to, actually, I can't see any of you, so I'm going to come out and stop sharing for a second. But can any of you on the call tell me what comes to mind when you think about Alzheimer's disease? What do you think of? Feel free to unmute and jump in, or use the chat. Exactly. Memory loss. Yep. That is probably the first thing that we all think of with Alzheimer's disease, right? Is loss of memory. And you're absolutely right. Fear. Okay. Yes. Fear. Confusion. Yes. What else? Yeah. It's anger. Yeah. Yeah. So I would guess that some of you on this call know someone living with dementia or have known someone living with dementia. When I asked this question, inability to recognize loved ones. Yes, that is a big one, especially for later stage in the disease. Yeah, so when I asked this question of a room of people, like my age and older, almost everyone puts up their hands. When I did this with the college students, we still had, I don't know, a third to a half of the room. Dementia is one of the fastest growing diagnosed diseases in our country right now. And the things that you all named are extremely common. And none of them are wrong, right? Like if you have been with someone living with dementia, you have felt their confusion. You have been confused yourself. You might feel afraid of what it might be like to be their care partner. It's actually, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jennifer. I love how you said that. Grappled with letting them live in their world instead of trying to orient them. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reshare my screen, and I am going to show you a little bit of our Beatrice lab, which, let me go back to slideshow here. So Beatrice is not a real person, although she feels real to all of us. She is a composite character that we created based on our experience with our own mom, talking to lots of different family caregivers, talking to doctors, talking to researchers, talking to just all of the different people that we could possibly talk to understand dementia as best as we can. And so we created Beatrice. So Beatrice she was a middle school math teacher for nearly 4 decades. She's Latina. She enjoys spending time with her family. She loves her grandson, especially. She goes to mass every Sunday. She loves music. She loves dancing. However, lately she's been experiencing some changes in her brain. Sometimes time moves too fast or too slow. She's hearing words differently, and sometimes she sees lights, shapes, and colors differently too. And as time progresses, these changes accelerate. Okay, so we're just gonna do like a few minutes in Beatrice's perspective. So to set the stage, it is Easter Sunday.
Hi, Mom. We're here.
Hey, what are you still doing in your PJs? Are you not leaving, Mom? I've come earlier if I knew. You what? Hey, Junior, could you please come in here? Could you wipe up the counters for me? And Mom, if you finish cutting those potatoes, I'll take care of everything else.
Did you ever make her cake this time?
It's Easter. Thanks so, sweetheart.
Okay.
Merry Easter!
Oh, it's Easter?
How are you? What's up, buddy? How you doing? Oh, you getting big, I can't pick you up anymore. Hey, baby, how you doing? Oh, man, it's a mess in here. Must be Mom's on her cooking here. Everyone?
What's she talking about?
We kissed her at church this morning. What's she doing still in her PJs?
I think she's under the weather today. I keep telling her to get dressed, but she's focused on cutting those potatoes.
We don't want any.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah.
Who's this beautiful lady you guys going to? How you doing?
Junior, how are you? I've heard so much about you.
Why is her stuff on the sofa? Here's the sofa.
Okay. Just to let everyone know, we're running a little behind on the food, but it'll be ready in about an hour.
What? What are you learning?
I know. I'm sorry. Tom is one of the weathers. Who's Tom? I've been cutting those potatoes in her BJ's all morning.
Why are these people here?
But she always gets so dressed up for these things.
Why am I the eggs in Easter?
Grandma didn't make a pound cake.
Mommy forgot to rake the cake?
I can cake it. Where's the flour?
This is small, she has chefs.
We have to have cake. Couple giggle.
Okay, no one is leaving. No one is leaving. Everyone, go into the giving room. We'll be ready soon.
Is she still cutting toast?
Tell them. You have to tell them.
Grandma?
Are you through? Take out your note and read it to them.
My brain isn't running as fast as it used to. It's like there's something missing. I'm mixed up.
I think Grandma's sick.
Okay, so if that had been inside the headset, then you your hands, oops, this is playing again. That's not what I want to do. Your hands would have been Beatrice's hands. I actually had a student come up and do this when I was presenting last week. And she was in the headset and kind of driving the experience for the whole room. And so what did you learn about Alzheimer's disease that you didn't think about before when I first asked you that question? Go ahead and either in the chat or feel free to unmute. Come back and find you guys. People are clueless. Yeah, thanks, Mary Ellis. Yeah, people don't necessarily understand just how overwhelming everything was. Each time someone came in, it was like starting all over again. Yeah. So again, feel free to pop in with things. I can't see the chat when I go back to my slide, but things that people typically comment on are like the lights look extra bright, and then yeah, there's like all these people in the room, and if you caught, a lot of the words were coming out sounding different. So when we created this experience, we wrote a script, and then we rewrote the script with changing out words to make it sound purposefully strange to the person who's embodying Beatrice. So instead of go into the living room, she says go into the giving room. And this really shows how people living with dementia have changes in their language processing abilities in addition to their ability to speak. So now right here, I have a new kind of empathy up. So actionable empathy for caregivers. So actionable empathy, I think, is a combination of compassionate empathy and cognitive empathy. So we just, we made some observations about what we think Alzheimer's disease is, or what we've observed in the past. We immersed ourselves in Beatrice's perspective. And then some of the things that you guys were just saying in the chat show that you were empathizing. So I would say that just now you probably experienced both emotional empathy, like feeling Beatrice's sense of being overwhelmed, but then also being able to say like things like people are clueless about what it's like to be living with dementia. It felt like starting over every time someone else came into the room. These are all pieces of cognitive empathy that you are having, like you're able to reflect that based on that experience. I'm going to come back out real quick so I can see the chat. What are some of the things that you would do to act differently if you had a loved one living with dementia and there was a holiday like Easter, or we've got Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up here very soon? What's something that you might do now that you've embodied Beatrice and you understand kind of holistically what's going on when someone is living with Alzheimer's disease? Go ahead and throw some things in the chat there. Not expect them to cook a whole feast, or at least check in on them. Yeah. So her family came in and they were like, wait, what? Where's the cake? And actually the scene prior to that, Beatrice is in the grocery store and she's getting confused trying to figure out how to get flour for the cake. So that's one of the reasons the cake wasn't made. Anything else? So in our app, we have our learning framework is prepare, embody, and reflect. So right now we're doing some reflecting. We also have an apply section that we usually have with our experiences. So we might have things like, don't leave her in the middle of a crowd. Yeah, exactly. So that's one of our tips that we have on there. If you have someone living with dementia and you have a big holiday, maybe instead of everyone being in a room all at once, if you are able, make sure that you have a space that is kind of a lower sensory space. And I mean, this could be great if you have any kids in your family who are living with autism or, you know, some sort of other neurodivergence that makes sensory things a challenge. This is going to be helpful for everybody. And maybe you communicate about that to the family. Like, this is the area that's going to be kind of low sense. We're going to keep it a little bit quieter. We're going to make sure that the lighting is just right. And we're going to be chill when we're in there. Let's see, Jasmine. Sometimes people get upset if you think they can't do something. Hang on. Sometimes people get upset if you think they can't do something. So find a way to work around the expectations. Yeah, I think those are great suggestions too. Thanks for that. So that's just like one example, right? There are probably lots of different things that that we could do to act differently next time. And so then going back again to our empathy wheel here, that's going to lead to better outcomes, right? The person living with dementia isn't going to be as stressed out. The family, having communicated about it prior to the holiday, they're going to be a lot less stressed out. And everyone is just going to have a lot better of a time at this holiday, right? And this is just like one example, right? One piece. Someone had said, like entering their reality instead of fighting their reality. So in the DEMA lab, where that one focuses on Lewy body dementia rather than Alzheimer's disease, there's a whole scene where you're embodying DEMA and you're having these hallucinations where like people are coming into the room and it's really stressful and you end up like throwing something and your family doesn't understand why you just threw something at them. And so there again, like being able to enter the person's reality and assume positive intent. Of course, it's really hard when you're a caregiver and you have the person's maybe natural personality in the mix too, not minimizing how challenging it can be as a family caregiver. But again, just like understanding perspective is one of the most important baselines that we can start with. Okay, I'm watching my time here. Just who is a caregiver? These are some of the people who train and learn with embodied labs. Students isn't in here, it should be. But essentially, everyone is going to be a caregiver at some point. Sounds like we've got some caregivers, people who are already active caregivers on this call. If you're not one right now, you will be at some point. It is just the nature of the world. Brief history of VR, just to give you some context. I have the link in here. I'm going to send this presentation, and I know it's being recorded. And anyone who wants to reach out to me for lit review, I've got all kinds of things that I couldn't put entirely into this presentation. But this is just sort of a timeline. Like technically, forms of VR have been around since, you know, like the 19th century. I would say, like, I vaguely remember Sega VR. I vaguely remember the Nintendo Virtual Boy. I think the reality is that VR is in its awkward adolescence right now. It's still, it's pretty hard to engage with VR, right? It's not like smartphones that are everywhere. To do immersive VR, you have to have a headset. I have this lightning bolt here in the timeline because 2015, so the first Oculus headset technically came out in 2010, but 2015 was when they created the Oculus Rift 1 and they opened it up to developers. So people who are interested in like building things within VR could get a hold of the first version of the Oculus. And then it was soon after that it became released to just like the general public. You can just, you know, go on the website and order one yourself. So that was really the inflection point. And so that's why I have just other headsets. So between 2015 and now, lots of other headsets have come into the market with varying degrees of quality and varying degrees of awkwardness to get in and out of them. You can probably see, I know this is small, but you can see the Google Cardboard in there. So I imagine some of you might have tried something in Google Cardboard or something similar to that, where you put your phone in and you're doing VR. Well, with Embodied Labs, we made the pretty conscious choice to not do mobile because frankly, at the time we were starting the company, it was making everyone nauseous. It was not high quality and it was not scalable in the ways that we needed it to be scalable for our first customers, which in fact, our very first customer was an academic library, the University of New England, which was pretty cool for me. And so, yeah, so we made the decision, we're gonna go with head-mounted display headsets, HMDs, of which you can see a lot of different kinds on this timeline that have evolved through the years. I think the ultimate that's out there right now is the MetaQuest, specifically the MetaQuest 3 just came out. We're getting all of our content to be compatible with that. And this headset is kind of a step ahead because it has controllers. You see the controllers there in the picture, but it also has integrated hand tracking. So something that's always been really important for us at Embodied Labs is a really high level of immersion, the highest level possible. And so we've used a little device called a Leap Motion to be mounted to the front of our headset. And that gives you the ability to have virtual hands inside the experience. So you saw those hands in the Beatrice experience. Those are actually your hands when you're wearing the headset, and you're able to interact in the experience using your own hands, not controllers. So the MetaQuest 3 actually allows you to do that. You don't have to use the controllers. So like I said, VR still remains in its awkward adolescent phase. It's maybe like with the MetaQuest 3, I would say it's maybe like getting ready to graduate and go to college. But the reality is VR is never going to be as ubiquitous as the smartphone, I think, until it's as easy to put on as literally a pair of glasses. And that's going to take a while for it to be truly immersive and as easy as that. That being said, I think we see already, and we will continue to see a huge explosion of immersive experiences that are being used for learning and training. And my kids are now 13 and 9, and I imagine that VR will be a kind of a standard part of like their workforce training when they're getting ready to enter the workforce because it just has so many applications. And I'll talk a little bit. Well, no, I'll talk about that right now. That's the next slide. So again, please shoot me an email if you want a lit review, an extensive lit review. I am a librarian still. I have one, trust me. But this is what the science is saying about VR. And this both creates opportunities and has some potential pitfalls. So what the science is saying is that when you are highly immersed in an experience and you're embodying someone in the first person, like we do with Embodied Labs, your brain is actually recording those experiences as if they are your actual memories. So this, there's like, some controversy on that, and there are some different perspectives in the research on this. But what we hear when we talk to people is that they put on the headset and embody someone like Beatrice, like we just did, and they are able to recall exactly how they felt doing that even months later. And we've seen this with, students in training. We have a lot of medical schools and nursing schools that are using embodied labs as part of their curriculum. So we see like inexperienced students getting in here and feeling those things and learning from it. But we've also seen seasoned healthcare workers and caregivers that have been doing this for decades. They get in the headset and they feel emotional empathy, and they when they reflect on it and are having cognitive empathy around it, they talk about learning things that they had never thought of before. So that's pretty cool for us. There's a lot of newer research around embodied learning and just sort of learning in general with VR, and XR is like the general term for like augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. That's why I have XR there. But basically, there's a lot of peer-reviewed research coming out that has, mixed perspectives, but generally, we're seeing that VR has, people are learning faster, and they are retaining far more than traditional learning, which I would classify as both face-to-face learning, hybrid learning, or online learning. VR has the ability now, with kind of the latest advances in the technology, to portray more authentic experiences of people that are living with all kinds of different challenges, including cognitive change or physical disabilities, neurodivergence, others. There's a whole fascinating like disability simulation literature that we've taken a deep dive into as a company, so that we make sure that we're creating experiences that are actually helping people learn about physical disabilities without stereotyping them more. So for instance, the Beatrice Lab, I don't have time to do it for this presentation, but I did do a piece with the students where Beatrice has really progressed in her disease. You're embodying her, you have like pretty significant visual impairment, but then it's Christmas time with your family and they turn on some music that you used to listen to when you were younger, and it completely changes the perspective of not only you as Beatrice, like the room kind of lights up and you're able to like enjoy the music and you see these like memories flashing by, but Junior, the little grandson, he gets the whole family up and dancing and all having a really good time together. And so by the end of the experience, you're feeling joy. And we put that in there really intentionally because a lot of you reflected some of the things that we think of with Alzheimer's disease: fear, anger, you don't recognize people, you have memory loss. But there's also joy in it. Like something that I remember is having dance parties in the kitchen with my mom to some of her favorite music from like the 60s and 70s, which we would have never done with her if she hadn't had dementia, because she wouldn't have been uninhibited enough to get up and start dancing. That wasn't her before she got sick. And then after she got Alzheimer's disease, she wanted to do that all the time. So I have all these like really fun, joyful memories of her that I would not have had otherwise. And that doesn't negate the things that were hard, but one of the things that I think we can do as caregivers that help with the day-to-day is like finding that joy. So last thing is just the ability to capture data in live environments. I have live in quotes because obviously this is still an immersive experience. It's not real life, but there's some really interesting ways that you can capture data in the headset with like eye tracking or with the way people interact with objects in the environment, that are allowing us to capture data that goes kind of beyond your standard pre and post assessment. And I think that's just going to get even more interesting as the technology progresses. Okay, so this is my last slide, I think. Yes, this is my last slide. So I want to leave at least a few minutes for questions, but again, this was my alternate title for this presentation: Librarian to Startup Entrepreneur, Weird or Perfect. So I definitely felt like I was going over to the dark side in a way when I left the library world and went into the business world, particularly a, you know, venture-backed startup company. It felt like such a vastly different world for me. But these things right here, which are all skills that I have, and I imagine are all skills that you all have who are listening on this call. These are all things that made me perfect for a startup business in particular. I'm, you know, I can research the heck out of something that needs to be researched. As the co-founder of the company that, you know, wasn't the CTO, I wasn't the programmer, I was not the chief technical officer. Basically, I became like everything else. Like if there was something that needed to be done that didn't fall clearly into either of those categories, I did it. And I was great at that because I was good at researching and I was great at problem solving. So I learned how to do QuickBooks and do our budget. I learned how to be a film producer. So I was like the executive producer for the 360 films that we needed to do every time we create a new experience. I was our salesperson. I was our customer experience person. I have reference interviewing equals empathetic and active listening. So I think, you know, the training that we get in library school to do reference interviews, and then, you know, the work that we do on a regular basis with students and faculty, that's like active listening, or I would say like being cognitively empathetic in a nutshell, right? And also just kind of the, you know, what information do you need? How can I help you get that? How can I problem solve? How can I do this without being judgmental whatsoever about what you're trying to find? All of these things really serve me well in the business world too. In addition to just knowledge of tech, I've always been someone who's been excited about emerging technologies. I tried to use them in information literacy instruction with students, and then people skills. So like I went into academic librarianship because I was excited about working with students. I was excited about working with faculty, and I loved the academic environment. So a label that I've given myself is that I'm a scrappy generalist. So like I can use all these skills that I have to figure out whatever needs to be done. And to a certain extent, that's exactly what I'm doing today. 9 years almost into to founding a company. So maybe some of you out there might have an idea for a company and are thinking about maybe taking the plunge. If you are, then I'd be happy to be a sounding board, because it is possible to do without, you know, selling your soul to the dark side. Okay, so that's my presentation. I went a few minutes longer than I wanted to. I know we only have a few minutes for questions, but this is my contact information. I'll pass this along to Rusty as well, so he can pass it to you. But please feel free to reach out and contact me. I would love to talk to any of you. What questions do you have? feel free to unmute too if you want, or you can put them in the chat like we've been doing. No questions? Okay.
Well,
If you
thank you, Erin.
Sure.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming today. And if you have any questions for Erin, I know she's very amenable to answering them. You have her contact information. I hope all of you have a great rest of your day. And thank you again, Erin.
Thanks, Rusty. Thanks for having me on. Take care, everyone.